What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to lesson number 19, Provisional Improv in 3D. The lesson from A Course in Miracles is I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. So good. Knowing that we're not alone, right? Knowing that we're not alone and that we're all participating in this sort of collective reality, this collective like illusion, as it were. A lot of what we think are private thoughts, section 2, verse 3 in A Course in Miracles talks about this in the workbook. Lesson 19, that none of our thoughts are really private, because a lot of the things that we think, we behave in that way. Our behaviors often give us away. They give us away in terms of how we feel about ourselves. They give us away in terms of how we feel, how we engage with the ways that we've projected onto others, and how we act that out, how we act out that illusion. This is a reminder that we are not just operating in a vacuum, that we are connected. And while I was thinking about this particular lesson, I was considering mycelial networks. It popped up in the creative unconscious tarot reading as well, but this mycelial networks are connected for miles underground. We can't see them, but they're still connected, and one tree in your backyard can communicate through that dense network miles away to other trees to inform them of pests, to inform them of all of these different things that would otherwise threaten their survival. I think the ego operates in a similar way, but on the flip side of that, so too can love when we choose it. So too can love when we choose it. Imagine that, unseen to everyone else, signals being sent, loving signals being sent from you outwards to others based on your recognition and your awareness in the present moment and your choice. You're choosing something more loving. You're choosing a more loving path. You're choosing something higher for yourself, and not higher in terms of hierarchical, but just higher in terms of more connected to that higher self for you. The world that we create, it's made up. We make up all of it. We make up all of it as we go. And I think that there's something profound about that, because then we start to get a glimpse into the collective illusions that we've bought into about personal power, about empowerment, what we're supposed to do, what we're allowed to do, who we're allowed to talk to and not talk to, who we're allowed to bring in and who we're not, based on these collective rules. This is about collective consciousness and the illusions that we cling to really tightly, the ones that we cling to really tightly. And artistically speaking, I think about object-subject relationships. They are informed by power relations. So full disclosure, I did my master's thesis on homonationalism and a lot of Foucault's theories. So Michel Foucault, theorizations about power relations and uneven power relations, and how that can inform things or be illuminated through processes of discourse analysis. And it was really diving deep into that. And there's a different kind of object-subject relationship that Foucault conceives of, different from the artistic one that we see. And that really is where I'm seeing this sort of translated into when we step back and look at the collective illusions that we've bought into. So what does that mean? Well, object-subject is just the observer and the observed object, right? So subject observes, object is observed. And when we get into these power relations, according to Foucault, subjects can be made into objects through institutions. What institutions and what choices are we making collectively that can make us into objects? I'm talking about, I'm thinking in terms of my own experiences as someone who came out in the church and then who transitioned, with religious family, who still love me to bits and pieces, by the way, so it's nothing bad. But I think about this object-subject relationship in terms of the collective illusions that turn us into objects, and that take away our agency, that take away our power, that take away our ability to choose. When I think about power and the way that we use it, I think about, there's a quote that talks about how, when we were younger, parents might have said, make good choices as we left the house or whatnot, but how sometimes later in life we begin to see that it's not that you made good choices, it's that you had good choices to begin with from the get-go, right? So that, and it's understanding the ways that we can be made into objects away from subjects, okay? Through these different power dynamics and specifically uneven power relations and power dynamics expressing themselves through relationships and connections that we have. So what I think of when I think of this particular lesson is I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. It's understanding that there's no need for us to continue to buy into specific collective illusions. And part of healing is moving through that and the uprooting of those things, and then moving through them to the other side of them in a way that's healing and that honors us, that deeply honors us. And I think this is where we get into this improv of, saying yes and through our actions and behaviors, but also yes and inwardly to ourselves, and allowing ourselves that flexibility to understand that we don't have to have it all figured out today. We do not. And then looking out and saying to ourselves, the things that we're projecting onto others, it's also part of a collective illusion. And as much as this is a turn inward into the present moment to observe ourselves from that place, I think this is also a turn to look outward and to make peace with what we see and to have compassion. This is a call to compassion and empathy, because what's happening outside of us is really a reflection of what's going on inside as well, to a certain extent, right? To a certain extent. And nowhere is this clearer than collective illusions. I think that this lesson, as much as it is a call to look within in moments of presence and in moments of choosing love over fear, this is also a call to consider the ways that we can attach ourselves to we can make associations through ego and identities to collective illusions and identify with them so strongly that the light can't get in. So we can't have compassion for others. We can't empathize. It becomes so difficult for us to do that because we cling to the collective identity. We cling to an ego identity that we've also attached to something else, somewhere else. And we reach for that on a consistent basis, but never in a way that bridges the gap between where we are now and how far apart other people feel from us, right? So this movement towards oneness, this movement towards coming together and alleviating that disconnect, what is that about? What is that about? Right now, in this particular lesson, it's just a consideration of it and seeing it, right? It's being present enough to observe it. It's being present enough to observe it. So that is lesson number 19. Provisional improv in 3D. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you. And wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, I hope that it finds you very, very well. Morning, afternoon, or night. Very well. Take care, my lovelies.